Afiya was a smart and self-made lawyer from Kumasi, Ghana. She believed in quiet strength, never argued with those who disrespected her, and always let her actions speak louder than words. She didn't come from a rich family, but she had built a successful life through hard work and discipline. One day, she met Zuberi, a charming and kind-hearted businessman from Moshi, Tanzania. From the first moment, their connection felt easy and natural, like they were made for each other. They laughed, dreamed, and planned a future together. But not everyone was happy about their love. Zuberi's father, Chief Bakery, was a proud and powerful man who held tight to his traditions. He believed in old rules, family name, and social status. When he heard about Afiya, he didn't care about her success or who she was as a person. All he saw was a woman he believed didn't belong in their world. To him, Afiya was just a village girl, pretending to fit into their polished life. He thought his son deserved someone from a rich and well-known family, not a woman who had climbed her way up from nothing. Chief Bakery didn't know the strength Afiya carried inside. He didn't know that behind her quiet smile was a woman who had already faced the world and won. Afiya didn't fight back with words. She didn't need to. She knew her worth, and so did Zuberi. And that was the beginning of a love story that would shake everything. The day Afiya met Chief Bakery for the first time was meant to be a beautiful one. It was a special family gathering in Tanzania, where everyone was supposed to celebrate her and Zuberi's love. Afiya had come all the way from Ghana with a heart full of hope and respect. She wore a simple but elegant dress and a warm smile. She knew this moment was important. She wanted to make a good impression and show his family the kind of woman she was, strong, humble, and full of love for their son. But from the second Chief Bakery walked into the room, she felt the air change. He didn't smile, didn't shake her hand, didn't even greet her properly. Instead, he stared at her with cold, judging eyes. Then, in front of everyone, he said the words that would sting forever. He looked her up and down and said, "She's nothing but a village girl in a city wig." The room went silent. Afiya froze. The insult hit hard, not just because of the words, but because of how little he knew her. He didn't ask about her life, her work, or her heart. He didn't care that she was a respected lawyer, or that she had built her own life from nothing. All he saw was someone he believed wasn't worthy of his son or his empire. After his harsh words, Chief Bakery refused to bless the marriage. He stood up, face full of pride and anger, and walked out, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a silence heavy with tension. Afiya could have cried. She could have shouted. But she did none of that. She simply stood still, calm and proud, her head held high. Zuberi gently took her hand and whispered, "I'm with you. Always." That quiet support was everything. Even though the day had turned painful, Afiya didn't let it break her. She had been through worse. She knew who she was, and she didn't need anyone's approval to keep loving Zuberi. But deep down, she also knew one day, Chief Bakery would learn just how wrong he had been. Chief Bakery had no idea who Afiya really was. He thought she was just a simple woman, someone with no name, no background, and no real value. But Afiya was far more than what met the eye. She was not just a lawyer, she was a silent force. Behind her calm smile and gentle eyes was a brilliant mind, and a powerful name in the legal world. Afiya co-owned one of the most successful legal consultancy firms in all of East Africa. Her firm worked with big companies, handled high-profile cases, and trained young lawyers across the continent. She had built her empire with hard work, late nights, and pure determination. But Afiya wasn't the kind of person to show off. She didn't talk about her success. She didn't walk into rooms needing to prove herself. Instead, she let her work speak for her. And it spoke louder than any words ever could. What made things even more interesting was that Afiya had recently invested in a fast-growing tourism company. She believed in quiet, smart business. That company, without knowing, was now handling logistics and transport for many of Chief Bakery's export deals. His goods moved because of her. His business ran smoother, thanks to her company. Yet he had no idea. That's how quietly she moved. That's how powerful she was. While Chief Bakery looked down on her, Afiya was already one of the people making his empire work from behind the scenes. But she never mentioned any of it. Not when he insulted her. Not when he refused to bless her marriage. She stayed silent because she knew silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. Afiya didn't need to tell him who she was. She knew the truth would reveal itself in time. And when it did, it would speak so loudly, even pride wouldn't be able to ignore it. Even after everything that happened, the insults, the cold looks, and the painful silence, Afiya and Zuberi chose love. They decided not to let one man's pride ruin what they had. They knew their love was real, and they refused to let it be controlled by anyone else. So, instead of waiting for acceptance, they moved forward with their wedding plans. But they didn't just plan flowers and food. Afiya and Zuberi sat down and created something even stronger, a marriage contract. It wasn't just any contract. It was a powerful legal agreement, mixing modern law with traditional Swahili marriage customs. They wanted their union to reflect who they were. Strong, smart, and deeply rooted in both culture and fairness. Afiya, being a lawyer, knew how to protect herself. And Zuberi, who respected her intelligence and independence, supported every word. In fact, it was Zuberi who suggested adding a special clause, one that surprised even Afiya. He said, "If we ever separate and you're not at fault, you should not leave with nothing. You deserve power, not pain." The clause stated that if they ever divorced and Afiya had done nothing wrong, she would receive 40% of his shares in his father's company. These shares were already signed, sealed, and legally hers, no matter what. On top of that, her law firm would handle all legal matters for the company. Afiya smiled when he proposed it. Not because she wanted power over anyone, but because it showed just how deeply Zuberi valued her. That single clause, tucked quietly into a folder of legal pages, would later become the talk of the entire city. No one knew it yet, but that small detail would turn their wedding day into a moment no one would ever forget. It was not just about love anymore. It was about respect, strategy, and a woman who refused to be underestimated. The wedding day finally came, and it was nothing short of magical. The air was filled with joy, music, and love. Guests from both Tanzania and Ghana had gathered, dressed in beautiful, colorful fabrics. Bright Ankara prints and rich Kent cloth flowed through the venue like a river of culture. Laughter filled the air. Children danced freely. And the smell of roasted goat, jollof rice, plantains, and shea blossoms made the day feel warm and familiar. Drummers played softly in the background, and the whole place glowed with happiness. It was more than just a wedding. It was a union of two countries, two hearts, and two strong souls. Everyone was there, except Chief Bakery. True to his word, he had refused to attend. At least, that's what everyone thought. But just moments before the ceremony began, the air shifted. Heads turned. Chief Bakery walked in slowly, dressed in traditional robes, with his walking stick tapping against the floor. Gasps moved through the crowd. Some were shocked, others just curious. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't smile. He simply said, "I'm only here to observe," and sat down in the front row. His arms were folded tightly across his chest, his face hard and cold, not showing a single emotion. As Afiya walked down the aisle, radiant and graceful, he didn't look at her. Not once. During the vows, he remained still, like a statue, refusing to nod or clap like the others. It was clear, he still had not accepted her. But Afiya didn't let it affect her. She walked with pride, stood with strength, and looked only at Zuberi. That day wasn't about gaining approval. It was about choosing each other. And even with all eyes watching, even with his father's silence, Zuberi never let go of her hand. The wedding continued with love and celebration, while one man sat in quiet resistance, not knowing that the real surprise was still waiting in the pages of the marriage contract. As part of the tradition, once the vows were spoken and the blessings offered by the elders, the officiant stepped forward with the final step, the wedding contract. In Swahili and Ghanaian culture, it's a sacred moment, when the oldest elder in the family reads the agreement aloud for everyone to hear and witness. In this case, that elder was Chief Bakery. Though he had refused to smile or speak kindly all day, he was still the head of the family. With respect, the officiant handed him the leather-bound folder containing the marriage contract Afiya and Zuberi had carefully prepared. The guests grew silent. All eyes were on him. Chief Bakery took the folder slowly, clearly not happy about it. His face showed no emotion. He flipped through the first page, then the second. Everything seemed normal, until he reached the third page. That's when everything changed. His eyes stopped. His hand froze in midair. He leaned in, reading the words again, slower this time, as if trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Then suddenly his body stiffened. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes widened in shock, and before anyone could react, he clutched his chest, stumbled backward, and collapsed to the floor. Gasps filled the room. Plates dropped. Some guests screamed. The music stopped. In just seconds, joy turned into chaos. Afiya stood still, her face calm but alert. Zuberi rushed to his father's side as others called for help. Elders and family members gathered in panic, trying to revive the chief. But everyone knew, something in that contract had shaken him to his core. Something he never expected. Something powerful. The silence that followed was heavy. The mighty chief bakery, who had once called Afiya a village girl, was now lying on the floor, brought down not by argument, not by force, but by a few lines written in ink, and a woman who had always chosen quiet strength over loud pride. After Chief Bakery collapsed, the entire wedding fell into silence. Guests whispered in confusion, some still frozen in shock. The leather folder had slipped from his hands and lay open on the floor. Slowly the officiant picked it up. His hands shook slightly as he turned to the guests and said, "For the sake of tradition and clarity, I will now read the clause that caused this reaction." The room was quiet. Everyone leaned in to hear what was written on that mysterious third page. The words that followed left everyone stunned. In a calm but clear voice, the officiant read the clause aloud. It stated that if Afiya and Zuberi ever divorced, and Afiya was not at fault, she would automatically receive 40% of Zuberi's shares in Bakery's main company. Not just a promise, not just a future plan, it was already done. The documents had been signed and notarized weeks before the wedding. It was legal, final, and binding. Murmurs spread across the room like wildfire. Some mouths dropped open. Some guests covered their faces in disbelief. But that wasn't all. The clause also revealed something even more shocking. Afiya's law firm would now hold legal control over all corporate disputes involving Bakery's empire. Any future issues, arguments, or decisions about the company's legal matters would go through her firm. Quietly, wisely, and without any show, Afiya had walked into the wedding already holding power. Power the chief never saw coming. People couldn't believe it. The same woman who had been insulted, doubted, and ignored was now, by law, one of the most powerful figures in Bakery's business. She didn't yell, she didn't fight, she didn't force anyone to respect her. She simply wrote it into the contract. That's all it took. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. The story of the woman in silence, who flipped the script with a single clause, had just begun. And everyone there knew. They would be telling this story for years. By the next morning, the news had spread like wildfire across the city and beyond. Everyone was talking about the wedding, not because of the food, not because of the fashion, but because of one woman and one contract. The same woman Chief Bakery had called a village girl in a city wig was now, by law, the most powerful woman in his entire business empire. The clause in the marriage contract became the headline of every conversation. In cafes, on radio shows, in offices, and even in markets. People couldn't believe it. They repeated the story again, and again like a legend being born in real time. Bakery's pride had blinded him. His old ideas about status and tradition had stopped him from seeing Afiya's strength. And now his ignorance had cost him control. Afiya didn't fight for revenge. She didn't shout, demand, or even defend herself when he insulted her. She simply did what she knew best. She used the law. Quietly. Legally. Powerfully. While he was busy judging her appearance, she was already writing herself into the future of his empire. At the wedding, she walked in with elegance and calm. People whispered about how graceful she looked, how she smiled politely even as the chief refused to bless her. But when she walked out, the whispers had changed. Now they spoke of her as a queen. A woman who didn't just marry into wealth, but walked away with leverage, respect, and undeniable power. She hadn't asked for a seat at the table. She had written herself into the deed. The entire city now knew her name. Afiya had become a symbol, not just of love, but of quiet strength, of dignity, and of what it means to play the long game. The woman they thought was nothing had just rewritten the rules and the contract. Chief Bakery lay in the hospital bed, weak and quiet. The strong, proud man everyone once feared now looked small, lost in his own thoughts. Ever since the wedding, he had said very little. Doctors checked on him, family came and went, but nothing seemed to matter. Then one morning he opened his eyes and said one name. Afiya. His voice was low, but clear. The nurses looked at each other in surprise. It was the first thing he had asked for since he collapsed. A message was quickly sent to her. Afiya came that afternoon, calm as always. She walked through the hospital corridor dressed simply, holding a bouquet of fresh lavender in her hands. The scent filled the room as she entered. She said nothing at first, just walked up to his bedside and placed the flowers gently on the table beside him. Chief Bakery looked at her with tired eyes. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. There was no hate left in him, only shame. Then Afiya finally spoke, softly but clearly. "You didn't want to bless us," she said, her voice kind, not bitter. "But your son did. And sometimes that's enough." Her words were like warm rain on dry land. Bakery tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, his eyes filled with tears. He broke down crying, not from pain, but from something deeper, regret. He wept for his pride, for the cruel words he once used, and for the love he almost missed. Afiya stood beside him in silence, not angry, not cold, just strong. She had proven herself without ever raising her voice. In the end, it wasn't her education, her power, or her success that broke his pride. It was her grace. Her quiet strength had done what shouting never could. In that hospital room, Chief Bakery didn't just see his son's wife. He saw the daughter-in-law he didn't deserve but was lucky to have. Afiya never laughed at Chief Bakery's fall. She didn't smile when people talked about how he had been humbled. That wasn't her way. While others gossiped and joked about the powerful man who collapsed at his own son's wedding, Afiya stayed quiet. She didn't waste her energy on revenge or pride. Instead, she poured her heart into her marriage with Zuberi. Their love became stronger, built not on fear or power, but on respect and understanding. Zuberi saw her not just as his wife, but as his equal. Someone he could trust, build with, and grow beside. Together, they created a peaceful home where love came first. They worked as a team, supporting each other's dreams and protecting their bond. Afiya continued running her legal consultancy, mentoring young women, and proving that success doesn't need to be loud. She had nothing to prove anymore. She had already spoken without shouting, and the whole city had heard her. People never forgot that wedding. It wasn't the music or the colorful fabrics that stayed in their minds. It wasn't the delicious food or the dancing. What people remembered most was the quiet power of one woman. A woman who was once mocked, once looked down on, and called nothing. She didn't argue or fight back. She simply rewrote the story and the contract. Her silence became the loudest message of all. And long after the flowers had wilted and the guests had gone home, the legend of Afiya remained. A reminder that real strength needs no noise.